Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So as you know, I do mainly MBTI videos and I go really deep into the cognitive functions so that it is more in depth and less fluff. And when you really look into functions, the personality types are clearer and it's easier for you to find out your true type. I also do like personality themed merch that you can check out in the description box below. And let's get started on this video. So I'm using my old background today because I have to use this background for a video earlier, and so I think I'm just gonna go with it. And with the other lighting, it's not very good today, so I don't know why. It just doesn't look good. Okay, so today is about the ENTJ personality, and this is a video that I've tried many times to do, but somehow something always goes wrong. Like the sound recording is not right, bad lighting, because I think this topic is also not an easy topic to talk about, for me at least. I do have very conflicting feelings about ENTJs because if you know about the functions, an ENTJ actually has exact same function as the ISFP and the ESFP, but in a different order. And also same function as the INTJ. And if you look at my videos, you would know that I have many ISFP friends and I also have many INTJ friends. I don't have a lot of ESFP friends, but the few ESFPs that I know, I find them very charismatic and very attractive, and I actually really like ESFPs. And then there's the ENTJ, whom I find to be the most difficult to handle in this entire group of people with the same functions. Reason being they are TE dominants, and I think I mentioned in the previous videos that I usually have problems with TE dominance. ESTJs, we don't share anything in common, so usually we just try to avoid each other as much as possible, But with ENTJ, it's a tricky case because there's not really a complete avoidance because ENTJs have things that I actually value. Mainly the extroverted sensing, because I have extroverted sensing and I'm weak at it. So whenever I see ENTJs use the SE, I tend to be really fond of them. Like, I would be like, I wish you can just, use SE and create a great atmosphere and have great jokes and, all that. And when ENTJs use NI, we also connect on a deeper level because we can have this like in-depth conversations. They are not really about superficial topics. They are more like, about things that are interesting and insightful about the world. And so there's always this conflict because whenever I see them use NISE, they kind of resemble, in a strange way, they kind of resemble the SFP personality. I mean, obviously in a different stacking because their NI is stronger, but it makes me very fond of being around them. And I would be like, I wish you can, in my head, of course, I don't say that to them, like, I wish you can stay in ESFP or SFP forever, but I think to myself, as I know about this personality type, I wish you can just be this really, laid back, fun SFP, But then they would go back to their dominant TE, and then I would get stressed, and then there would be tension and conflict and so on. So that's pretty much like what happens. A lot of times is I enjoy the times when we use our common functions. But when it gets to the TE parts, that's when I get uncomfortable because I do have a more challenge dealing with TE. Not that I cannot, but as a dominant function, I have a lot more challenge. And I get a lot more uncomfortable and also anxious dealing with that function. But we do share like the SE sense of humor, which is kind of, SE sense of humor is very inappropriate and it's very funny to me. Like, my ISFP friends and I always engage in those kind of humor, and sometimes, you know, ISFPs can also act like an ENTJ. If you know the stacking, it's like opposite, but when they develop their functions, they kind of can act as an ENTJ, but obviously not gonna transform into a chief executive or any of that sorts. But ISFPs can kind of act like them in a sense that they can have a very similar sense of humor. They can be very blunt. They can kind of criticize other people in a funny way. And it's all like fun and joy, because with the ISFP, their TE is not a dominant function. But with ENTJ, it's like, oh, it's really funny when they, you know, are blunt to other people, but it's not funny when they're blunt with you, because then you are like the receiver of that, you know. It's not that fun when they use TE on me, especially as a dominant function. I kind of get really resistant to that. But at the same time though, I learned a lot from ENTJs, and ENTJs, it's very important to know what you can learn from an ENTJ, because ENTJs can really teach you about success. And the reason being is ENTJs make sure that they do what they say, and they make sure that they really make their dreams happen. And this is something that is kind of rare if you think about it. Like most of the time, you know, most of us, we most likely have some kind of dream that we have not fulfilled. Like we may think, oh, I want to be like a director, or I want to build my own business from scratch, I want to perform on stage, I want to be a musician, whatever. Most of the time, we don't actually do the things that we say we want. Like we may say, oh, okay, I want to be like this pilot, but then we don't really do anything. Because it's too intimidating. Like this dream is just scary, so we don't do anything. But ENTJs, they really put in the effort and they really make it happen. So most ENTJs I know are pretty accomplished in their own field. So whether it's in education, if they happen to be a teacher, or you know, they are like the boss of a company, or they are a politician. I mean, of course, I don't personally know any ENTJ politicians because they tend to be like the president, which I obviously don't know. They just are willing to make it happen, and a lot of them, not always, but a lot of them are willing to go through a lot of shit just to get to where they want to be. And of course, sometimes it may seem a bit excessive because they can be really like fixated on the idea of success, and they want to get to the goal that they want, and so they can almost be like the end justify the means. Like for example, if ENTJ's dream is to be this like Wall Street, you know, executive type of guy, like he's willing to just go through a lot of crap, you know, play politics, maybe even manipulate people and lie and whatever, as long as he can get to the Wall Street executive position. I'm not saying always it's the case, but usually if you want to climb to positions of power, you kind of have to play a bit of the game, you know? And ENTJs are really good at playing the game because they are like, you know, don't blame the player. They're like, I'm just playing the game. This is what I need to do to get to the goal. So, yeah, it's the end justifies the means kind of mentality. So, I mean, of course, the flip side is that sometimes it comes with certain repercussions, and there are other issues that may come up as a result. But no matter what, okay, ENTJs are usually really good at what they're doing, and that's something that we can all learn from because we have our dreams. I mean, obviously, not everyone's dream is the same as the ENTJ, who usually prefers to be in positions of power. So maybe they can be like a leader of a fashion magazine, you know, they could be an editor-in-chief somewhere, or they could be a chief executive, or they could be a politician, or some kind of the TE craving for this hierarchy, okay, being the top dog basically. I mean, we don't always have the same dreams, but to make it happen, we really need to look at how the ENTJ does it. And the way they do it is that they really take action. They're not going to be sitting around, you know, talking to people 100 times about, oh, I dream to be the boss of this company, or I dream to be this like director. They're going to actually make it happen. and they're really determined. They are really tenacious about it. So it's almost like nothing can get in their way. But of course, when it comes to positions like the president, sometimes you need more than hard work, you know. I mean, there's many other factors into play. But I would say a majority of ENTJs can at least get really close or about the same as what they dream of, because they make sure that they stick to their word. Like whatever they want, they will go get it. And that's something really important for us to learn. Like, time waits for no one, you know? Like, if you want to do something, you better get going. Because if you're just talking about it, like, nothing's going to happen. And it's pretty much your life is going to be, like, nothing special is going to happen. Second thing about ENTJs is they love giving feedback to people. And this is something that we also can benefit from, because I mentioned it in my other video about taking tea criticism. No matter how they deliver it, it's up to us to get what we can from it. And since the ENTJ personality really likes giving people feedback, I would suggest that, you know, people in general try to learn from them as much as they can, because it's like a free resource. Like, I mean, not a free resource, but it's like a resource for us to really learn from our mistakes. Even though ENTJs can be pretty cold and harsh when doing it, but we manage to internalize it in a good way and to learn from it, we can actually benefit a lot from their work ethic and just learning how they make success happen for us in our own field. You know. What I think ENTJs don't see in themselves, though, of course that's also related to functions, ENTJs have very weak introverted feeling. And so, you know, when it comes to our cognitive function, I encourage all types not to only rely on their strong functions, because all our functions are part of us. Even the functions that we don't usually value are also useful in this world. So, I mean, much more for the functions that we actually value, we have to try to at least be more in touch with them in some way. Otherwise, it can cause a lot of havoc. So for ENTJs, a lot of ENTJ leaders are not in tune with the FI. And this is also partly because they are resistant to introverted feeling. Because introverted feeling kind of goes against the stereotype of this really strong leader. And ENTJs like to show up as a strong person. They don't like to be seen as weak. It's kind of embarrassing, like it's something shameful, especially if they already hold really high positions, like even ruling a country or ruling a company, wherever they are like located. It's really embarrassing to them personally to admit to themselves, and even less, I mean, to other people, that they have this weakness, which we all know as introverted feeling. So it's kind of interesting how in the MBTI community, we are able to actually get a lot more insights into the stronger personalities than we would otherwise be able to see, because they present themselves in such a strong way. You'll be surprised to know, like, the introverted feeling inside them is very vulnerable, very hypersensitive. And that's something that a lot of ENTJs I know, especially ENTJ men, they do not want to admit to themselves that they have a side of themselves that is really hypersensitive and vulnerable. And so what tends to happen is that, of course, they don't show it in terms of crying in front of people or in terms of like brooding all the time. I mean, they show it through anger. So because FI, if you look at the developed FI, it's about experiencing your emotions to the fullest. And because a lot of ENTJ men, especially the ones who hold very high positions, they don't want to experience weakness. Like, they see feeling as a kind of weakness. And so they try to minimize the experience of sadness, of shame, of embarrassment, of, I don't know, guilt maybe, of like feeling hurt, disappointed, you know, human emotions. So they throttle their FI using the TE. So they would be like, you know what, I'm just gonna settle these emotions by working. And of course, I mean, it's a stereotype, but it's also kind of true. Because in my life experience, I had the privilege of engaging with different personalities and knowing different types of people. And I happen to know a few of this, Wall Street type of people, or, this like almost American Psycho-esque type of personalities. I mean, of course, not like literally American Psycho, but like similar to Patrick Bateman, if you know the protagonist of that film. And literally, some of them are in like breakdown. And of course, I'm not like close enough to them to really know what goes on behind closed doors. Like, do they just have like a crying session when no one's looking? I don't know. But I know this guy, so I went for this therapy session once. It was free. It was like an introductory session. I was kind of curious about psychotherapy and stuff. And there was this guy. He was this like, really successful person, okay? I don't know whether he's a ESTJ or ENTJ because not enough, conversations with him personally to find out. But he was this really successful boss. He made a lot of money and he had a family. But because of his temper issues and his inability to be in touch with his own emotions, and as a result, he's not able to be in touch with other people's emotions because, you meet people as deeply as you meet yourself, So he broke down suddenly, like in the middle of nowhere. He just started like crying and talking about his wife divorcing him and how he lost everything. And this is a disaster that a lot of movies about ENTJs also portray, right? You see Meryl Streep in The Devil Wears Prada as Miranda Priestly. Classic ENTJ character, right? Full of charisma, always wearing sunglasses and very fashionable. But like the private life is kind of in shambles because she couldn't stop working and she couldn't stop to take care of her own needs and her family's needs and so and most likely her employees' needs too, because at the end of the day, we are all emotional beings. Like whether we like it or not, that is something that we cannot hide from or divorce ourselves from. Like even if you try to deny it, it's just going to come up stronger in a shadow way. With ENTJs, like resistance, the more resistance there is, the more fight back. So FI is going to scream for attention, it's going to throw tantrums, it's going to like maybe attack them late at night, metaphorically speaking. And I also think that, when it comes to leadership, ENTJs are really efficient at what they do. But when it comes to managing people lacking FI or just emotional functions in general, it's really a waste because you can get so much more done by taking care of people's emotional needs. And I know that sounds like such an annoying thing to say, right, to a TE user. Like, can we stop talking about emotions in business? Like, that's not helpful, it's counterproductive, whatever. But at the end of the day, as I've mentioned before, we are all emotional in some ways. And if you know about really successful companies, right, like Google is famous for, really giving employees the freedom and creativity and room for self-expression. And they really respect individuality, which is another thing that FI is good at doing. And so they are able to meet emotional needs of the employee, and that's why they're able to sustain themselves for so long, to dominate the market. I mean, of course, people will have their own opinions about Google and so on, but they're really good at keeping their employees in a very passionate state. And in the long run, that's what's going to bring your company to great heights. It's when people really love to work there. It's when people really love being there. And I think that there is a time to be harsh, and there's also the time to be nice. And it's all about playing that balance. And it's a really fine balance. I have been under many different leadership styles, and people might say like, oh, you have never been in this like high position, like who are you to give guidance, especially knowing that a lot of ENTJs are really high ranking. But I am really good at observing people, and what I notice is that I have been under ENFJ leaders, ESFJ leaders, INTJ, ENTJ, and I noticed that at the end of the day, what you can learn from people who lead with FE, for example, is that they're really good at meeting people's needs, and they know what kind of communication is suitable for a certain type of person. And that is actually a talent in itself. Because at the end of the day, you want your whole team to be efficient, right? You don't want to just be efficient by yourself, because that means you're gonna have to shoulder most of the workload. And obviously, ENTJs hate that. Like, why do I have to deal with all this shit? Why can't people play their role, you know? But it's also about the intuitive understanding of people and what people are good at, right? So assigning the tasks that people are naturally skilled at most of the time, and also being able to communicate with different personality. That's something that ENFJ leaders excel at. ENTJ leaders are good at giving people constructive feedback, and that is something that ENFJs sometimes are not that good at giving, because they tend to be overly encouraging. But ENTJ's leaders are like the opposite. They sometimes are like overly harsh, and because they are overly harsh, there is this point where the employee just hits. They can't go further, because people kind of need both the constructive feedback and the encouragement to keep going. That's just, natural as human beings, We want to feel like we have potential, that we are valued, but at the same time, we also want people to point out to us what we can improve on. So like being able to do both is really, at the end of the day, it's really going to benefit the ENTJ, because you're going to win. You're gonna actually emerge as top of the competition, which is what the ENTJ wants, and that goes into developing the feeling function that a lot of ENTJs don't want to really confront or face up to. But I would encourage ENTJs to get out of your comfort zone, have more friends who use FI or FE, are sensitive to people's needs and so on, and learn from them. Really, it's going to benefit you so much. Like, it's going to benefit your success, it's going to benefit your personal relations, everything. So that's the end of my video. Hope you enjoyed it and hope you learned something from it. The next video, I'll be going back to my old background once again. Remember to like and subscribe if you liked the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!